Kwa majina naitwa Sofia Ebi, ni coordinator wa shirika lisilo la kiserikali NGO ambaye inaitwa African Court Coalition. Tupo Arusha na malengo yetu hasa sisi ni kusaidia kuitangaza mahakama ya Afrika ya haki za watu na binadamu. Na leo hii tuko hapa tumekusanyika kwa sababu ya mkutano ambao tunaufanya kwa pamoja, sisi African Court Coalition, lakini na mahakama ya Afrika yenyewe, lakini pia na washirika wetu ambao wanaitwa Center for Human Rights, University of Pretoria, wao wako South Africa. Lengo kubwa hasa la mkutano huu ni kwa ajili ya tuna create platform ya washirika mbalimbali ambao wametengeneza presentations kwa ajili ya kuongelea hasa swala la utekelezaji wa maamuzi ya mahakama ya Afrika. Kwa hivyo mkutano huu tunaufanya sisi watatu kwa pamoja, na lengo hasa ni kwa sababu kati ya changamoto ambazo ziko sasa hivi zinazoikabili mahakama ya Afrika ni kutokutekelezwa kwa maamuzi yake, ama tunasema decisions ama judgments zake hazitekelezwi na nchi ambazo ni wanachama wa African Court Protocol. Kumekuwa kuna changamoto hiyo kubwa kwa muda mrefu, kwa sababu nadhani hata mmesikia leo wakati makamu wa rais wa mahakama hii alikuwa anaongea, anatoa presentation yake, amesema utekelezaji upo chini ya 10%. Mpaka sasa hivi utekelezaji wa maamuzi ya mahakama ya Afrika ni chini ya 10%. Kwa kweli hichi ni kiwango ambacho ni kidogo sana, na inabidi wadau mbalimbali, kwa sababu kwenye mkutano huu of course wadau wakubwa ni wanazuoni ama tunasema academics, lakini pia kuna mashirika yasiyo ya kiserikali, tuna taasisi nyingine mbalimbali, taasisi za haki za binadamu za mataifa ambazo tunasema ni NHRIs, lakini na wadau wengine pia ambao wote wamekuja pamoja, na uzuri pia tunao wawakilishi kutoka serikali. Nadhani kwa hapa tuna wawakilishi 5 ambao tuna mwakilishi kutoka Tanzania, tuna mwakilishi kutoka Benin, Cameroon, DRC na Malawi. Na ni vizuri tukiwa na hao wawakilishi kwa sababu hii changamoto tunayesema ya kutokuwa na utekelezaji wa maamuzi haya ya hii mahakama ya Afrika, changamoto kubwa zinaonekana ziko upande wa nchi wanachama. Kwa hivyo ni vizuri tukiwa tukisikia kutoka kwao changamoto zipi ambazo wanazo, halafu tuweze kuelewa. Lakini hasa kuna kama nilivyosema presenters wengi ambao watapresent papers zao ambazo wameziandaa kwa ajili ya kuangalia nyanja tofauti za hii process nzima ya utekelezaji wa haya maamuzi ya mahakama ya Afrika.
So my name is Nkatha Murongi. I am from the University of Pretoria in South Africa, the Center for Human Rights. We are here to host a conference on the implementation of the decisions of the African Court and to look at their impact at the domestic level. And the main interest is to see how these decisions are, how African countries are taking these decisions to their local jurisdiction and giving them effect at the national level. We are doing this in partnership with the court, the African Court on Human and People's Rights, with the African Coalition for an Effective African Court, and with a few other partners that are supporting our work. So there has been a big problem with implementing the decisions, and most of these problems occur because it seems that African countries are not willing to invest the time and the resources that is required to achieve the decisions of the court. Most of these decisions, by the time the litigants come to court, they are issues that the African countries have had an opportunity to address at the national level, but they have not. And when they hear the decisions coming from the court, sometimes there is a reluctance. That is what we see. A few countries have implemented decisions, but largely the general trend is that we don't get African countries responding as fast enough. This conference is supposed to we are looking at why is that. Some of the reasons we know, some of them we can think it is maybe lack of commitment and political will. but most of the times there are other issues that we may not understand. For instance, if it is a question of government priority, allocation of relevant budget, and also national priorities such as protection of groups of people like indigenous people.
My name is Justice Stella Anukam, a judge of the African Court on Human and People's Rights and a Nigerian. Yes, that paper indeed was to set the scene for the purpose of this conference, which is examining the challenge we have with the implementation of the decisions of the African Court on Human and People's Rights. So what we attempted to do is to say where we are at. We looked at the level, we looked first, I think the Vice President of the Court in his presentation referred to the number of decisions we have made so far since the establishment of the court, which is over 15 years now, which runs into more than 400. And then we also looked at the unfortunate level of implementation, which is just about 7%. And we're asking ourselves why and what can we do to improve the level of compliance of the decisions of the court by the relevant stakeholders. Primarily, we identified with the protocol establishing the court, which in the relevant articles 29, 30 says that the Executive Council of the African Union should monitor the execution of the judgment of the court. And then we also have another article in the protocol that requires state parties, whereby state parties have undertaken to ensure that the decisions of the court are implemented. And for what purpose? To ensure that human rights is protected across the continent. Because what we do in court is to interpret and apply the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. So in essence, we are trying to see how we could protect the human rights of all citizens in the continent. So when we make decisions, it's towards the furtherance of that provision. And when the decisions are not implemented, it becomes worrisome, because it seems as if that the rights are being truncated, and then where there are cases of violations, they aren't proper reparation. Because in the court, we give our judgments in twofold. We look at the merits. In looking at the merit, we look at vis-a-vis the African Charter, the applicant's claim, and to see if we can establish a violation based on the Charter or any other human rights instrument that the state party is a party to. For example, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, that a lot of African countries are also party to, apart from the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Okay, so that is what we do on merits. And in instances where we establish a violation, the Charter requires that reparation, that is compensation, should be made in monetary terms, or in any other term. It could be the amendment of a legislation. So we now give our judgment, and then sometimes we tell the state, amend your law, or we tell the state, pay compensation for moral damage that has occurred. Or if the applicant is able to establish pecuniary damage, we also say you recompense, you pay. And that is what we do. So having given the judgment, it now lies with the respondent state or whoever we have identified to have violated the Charter to do the needful to implement our decision. So far, the level of implementation has not been something that is of interest to all of us. That is why at this conference, we have stakeholders from the Human Rights Center of the University of Pretoria. We have the coalition on the implementation of the decisions of the court, or many stakeholders from universities cut across. They are all here. They have assembled together to see how this challenge, we can all collectively overcome it. The court, as I said, does not really have the responsibility. Ours is to give the judgment. That we always do. But in order to assist the relevant parties to also ensure that the decisions are implemented, we have recently had cause to amend our rules, the rules of court in 2020, to have a session at Section 81 that will enable us to hold compliance hearing. In the compliance hearing, parties come before us again and they tell us the challenges they are facing, why they have not implemented. So that when we have such a decision, we're able to attach it to our activity report, which we submit to the body that has been taxed in the protocol to monitor the execution of our judgment. That is the Executive Council of the African Union. The paper I gave earlier today, we identified that our decision has been completely implemented by Burkina Faso in the Zongo case as well as the Konate case. They have completely executed 100%.
Il faut commencer par les attentes.
Oui, alors comme attente, nous espérons qu'à la fin de cette conférence, il y aura une sensibilisation sur l'importance de mettre en œuvre les décisions de la Cour.
So, ratify protocol inayounda mahakama kufanya hiyo kazi na kuendelea kufanya ratification ya hiyo protocol.
Et nous espérons surtout que ceux qui représentent les États et les organisations ici pourront à leur tour partir expliquer l'important déjà de faire la déclaration au niveau de la Cour africaine et surtout l'important de respecter les décisions qui sont rendues, parce que les décisions sont rendues au nom de tous les peuples africains, parce que la Cour africaine est un organe qui a été créé par l'Union africaine qui doit servir tous les États membres de l'Union africaine.
Nchi mbalimbali za Afrika kutekeleza na kuzingatia maamuzi ya mahakama yetu.
Pour ce qui est de l'importance de l'exécution des décisions de la Cour africaine, il est important de comprendre que lorsqu'une juridiction rend une décision, la finalité de cette décision est qu'elle puisse être mise en œuvre. Parce qu'il y a des mesures qui sont prises et c'est la mise en œuvre de ces différentes mesures qui fait avancer l'état des droits dans le respect des droits humains. Et nous profitons d'ailleurs de cette opportunité pour demander aux médias de soutenir les travaux de la Cour africaine, de mieux sensibiliser, de mieux informer sur l'utilité de l'exécution des décisions de la Cour africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples.
I'm a Nigerian and I work as the program manager for the litigation and implementation unit at the Center for Human Rights. The Center for Human Rights is based in the University of Pretoria in the Faculty of Law. The objective of this conference is to bring together different stakeholders that are crucial for the implementation of decisions of the African Court. So some of the key stakeholders that we have for this conference are personnel from the court itself, because the conference is looking at the implementation of decisions of the court. So we consider the court as one of the vital stakeholders that should be in this conference, and we have the justices of the court, about 10 of them, and also senior legal officers from the court. Now, in addition to that, we have academic scholars who are also going to be speaking, from an academic perspective on some of the issues that are related to implementation. Also, from a practical standpoint, we have members of civil society organizations who will also, discuss practically on the ground. And most importantly, we also have representatives from state focal points, because remember, when the court issues its decision, it is against the state, and it is the state that decides to give effect to that decision. So we also consider the state focal points of the different African countries to be very crucial, and those are largely the 4 categories of stakeholders that we have for this conference, and it's about 90 participants in the conference.
So what will be the outcome of the conference?
Well, one of the key outcomes of the conference is that because it is also an academic conference, so the first one is that the paper presentations that we will have from the conference will be published by the Center for Human Rights as a special issue of journal, and also most importantly, we will take the key recommendation from this conference and use it to build, the center will use it to build a dialogue that we will continue with the African Court and also with our collaborating institution and also other stakeholders. Those are the 2 primary outcomes that we are expecting from this conference.
Hii ni Arusha Kondo Hotel, hoteli ya kisasa iliyopo Kaloleni katikati ya jiji la Arusha. Muonekano wake ni wa meli iliyobeba kila kitu. Namba 1, kuna maduka ya biashara. Namba 2, ofisi za taasisi mbalimbali. Namba 3, ndo hoteli yenyewe sasa. Hapa utahudumiwa na wahudumu nadhifu wenye taaluma na kazi yao. Kwa ajili ya usalama, milango yote inafunguliwa kwa kadi maalum zinazotumia umeme. Ukiwa ndani ya hoteli, unaweza kuona mji wa Arusha vizuri na kupata upepo mwanana kutoka katika vilima vya Mlima Meru. Kuna sehemu tulivu kwa ajili ya kupata chakula kizuri kilichopikwa hapa kutokana na oda yako. Arusha Kondo Hoteli inakukaribisha kuja kupumzika hapa. Kwa mawasiliano zaidi, arushakondohotel@gmail.com. Simu 0747 705 090 na 0676 705 090.